NHL's conference finals are set. We're down to the Final Four as we bring in two of our good friends in Jack Michaels and Bob Stauffer. This is the panel presented by Sportsnet. Bob, for the second straight year, it's Edmonton, Dallas in the Western Conference Final. For Edmonton, they've been in this position in 3 of the last 4 seasons. For Dallas, their 3rd straight Western Conference Final. 2 teams that are knocking on the door. Your expectations come game 1.
I think it's going to be a good series. I think it's going to be a close series. I think last year you could make an. I mean, when you're talking a 6 or 7 game series, you're talking a bounce here or there. Edmonton survived a scenario in game number 1, a double minor to Connor McDavid to start the overtime, and then Connor finished off a setup from Evan Bouchard and won that game. And then think back to what happened here in game 6 between Edmonton and Dallas. McDavid with a brilliant goal, Hyman a power play goal, and then Stuart Skinner 33 save, right? So I don't know if a lot of people thought the Oilers would have the goaltending advantage in last year's series, but Stu had a .922 save percentage, and Ottinger is one of the best goalies on the planet, was at .901. These are 2 really good clubs. I don't think any of us are surprised that they're in the Final Four. I think there's a bunch of good teams, and they're amongst a couple of them. And I know we'll break down further sort of the respective strengths of the teams. But I, for one, am not surprised that the Oilers are seeing Dallas again.
Well, and it's a case where you've got 2 hungry clubs. I mean, Dallas has been knocking on the door, a 20 final, losing in Game 7 overtime to Calgary in 22, obviously having dropped the last 2 conference finals. Edmonton, as you said, 3 trips to the Western Conference Final in the last 4 years and losing to the eventual champions 3 years in a row. I mean, Vegas would tell you and did tell us during the course of this past series that absolutely Edmonton was the toughest challenge they faced on the way toward the 23 Cup. So you've got 2 teams that have been sniffing around it for a lot. The thing for me, we talked in the last series about, kind of a turning point, how Edmonton would handle the moments against Vegas where the series could flip one way or the other. They didn't a couple years ago. They were ahead 2-1 in Game 5, had it nice and quiet late in the second period. All of a sudden, penalty trouble, and they're down 2 in a span of a minute 30. Dallas has to face the same question this year because the Stars, for me, and I know what Bob's talking about with respect to a switch in Game 1 and obviously Stuart Skinner in Game 6, but it's Game 4 actually. Dallas up 2-1, up 2-0 in Game 4. This place was quiet, and it seemed like Dallas was absolutely about to take a stranglehold on the series, leading 3-1 and going back home for 2 of the final 3. And instead it was Edmonton that rallied, won that game, and tipped the series dramatically in its favor, came back and played, I think, their best game that we saw the Oilers play until the 3 or 4 that we've seen in the last 2 weeks. And that was Game 5 in Dallas last year. So it's 2 teams that have been around it. It's 2 teams that have been close and not handled those moments. And now they're going head-to-head, and there's not much separation again.
Bob, what do you make of the Oilers' special teams, especially on the power play? They got to start clicking here, especially against a very good Dallas Stars.
Well, you were there yesterday. Connor McDavid, unsolicited, offered that up, that they got to get going on the power play. The reality of the situation is Dallas, they played Colorado's a good team.
Yeah,
but Dallas got a negative goal differential through the opening 2 rounds of the playoffs. They haven't been great on the road, and they haven't been great 5 out of 5, but they've been terrific in special teams. They're 3rd in the power play, 3rd in the penalty kill. The Oilers' power play has been quiet, and frankly, it's lost some momentum for them at times on the road. They're 0 for 14 on the road. They're 6 for 10 at home, but they're 0 for 14, and they're going to have to find a way to score on the road. And so I think with the power, anytime a power play struggles, the solution for me, and it might seem simple, is just get pucks to the net and create chaos and attack the net. I like to see what Edmonton's going to do different because they're playing against a team, as Jack knows, that has traditionally had really good penalty killing with the Dallas Stars.
For me, I'm not as concerned, quite frankly. It's a small sample size. They're still 25% of the postseason. As Bob mentioned, their home is kind of outweighed their road. Do I expect 60% at home in this series? No. But do I expect 0% on the road in this series? No. I think when it comes to special teams, it can obviously decide a series, but I wouldn't necessarily go that far to say Edmonton's power play is struggling and Dallas's is fearsome, because quite frankly, right now one's 30%, one's 25%. I don't think it's a big deal, but I will say this. What Bob talked about with respect to Skinner and Ottinger, I do think Edmonton's going to need to saw that off. And that's an obvious. Again, goaltending is so crucial in this series, and Adin Hill wasn't good enough for Vegas. I mean, quite frankly, the Golden Knights lost a couple of overtime games, and I think if you asked Vegas and, Adin Hill played to a 9-10, we might still be playing in that series. I mean, it wasn't a real 5-game series.
Yeah.
It was decided at the margins, as this one will be.
All right, Jack, let's build off of that because the rest of the way here on the panel, we're going to go position by position, starting in goal. You got goaltending duty. Stuart Skinner, of course, coming off back-to-back shutouts, but he's proven last spring that he can play at this level. Against Jake Ottinger, one of the best goalies in the world, 1.91 goals against average, 922 save percentage. How much belief do you have in number 74?
Well, I think Stuart Skinner is capable of going on the kind of run that we saw after he got through the Vancouver series. And I thought the team did an excellent job last year of insulating him in games 6 and 7, and then he took it from there and played very well the rest of the way. Again, he had a better save percentage in the final than Sergei Bobrovsky did. I would say this, he's also capable of mediocre stretches, but I think a 2-goaltender system might still be in play here.
Okay.
I wouldn't be shocked if Stuart Skinner, if Edmonton wins 8 of the next 15 games and goes on to win the Stanley Cup, I would not be surprised if Calvin Pickard is in net for 1 or 2 of those. It's always struck me as a bit odd.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
In the Western Conference that you play all year, you play 52 and 30. And then in the playoffs, you play 26 and none. That's never made a ton of sense to me. And I don't, as much faith as I have in Stuart Skinner that he's on a roll right now, I would say this. It's also a possibility that Calvin Pickard, we haven't seen the last of him. And that wouldn't necessarily mean that Stuart Skinner's played poorly.
Yeah.
It's just, 2011 final. Would it have been the worst thing if Vancouver with Roberto Luongo struggling
Not at all.
on the road
Is
played Corey
this the
Schneider
end? Yeah.
against Boston?
You have made more sense with that point than anything else that I can recall over the last 15 years. I 100% agree with you. I just like it is taxing for goaltenders on Western Conference teams. And
We got a 4-hour plane ride between cities.
Yeah.
And I actually think if you look at the goaltending as a whole, there's an argument to be made, and this is going to drive Dallas fans nuts, that actually Edmonton might be in a better position because Pickard has played and DeSmith has not.
And Jack, the Oilers have a head coach that is willing to also
Yes.
use the other guy as well.
He plays the head coach plays everybody.
Yeah, he does.
And that's a factor. I mean, when you're in overtime against the Vegas Golden Knights and he's rolling over 4 lines and he doesn't go to McDavid and Draisaitl and load them up, you're building some belief in some of those other players. So, and we know that Dallas played 11 and 7, so that's something to watch as well.
And the guy on the other end, Jake Ottinger, I thought it was interesting during that series against Winnipeg. He said, I want to be the Olympic starter come Team USA next season. Well, he got the better of Connor Hellebuck. We'll see what we have in store in terms of Skinner versus Ottinger, part number 2. All right, Bob, you're on the team defense.
Okay.
How does the Dallas Stars defense compare to Vegas's? Because Vegas's, there was a pretty big spotlight on them, and the Oilers ran right through them.
Yeah, well, I think actually, I think that Vegas had a couple of guys in the back end that were probably banged up a little bit. I think that Dallas getting Miro Heiskanen back is massive.
Massive.
I mean, basically, you could argue that Theodore probably at this stage a little bit more established than Thomas Harley, but Heiskanen flips the switch in terms now. So their top 3 is really good.
Yeah.
Right?
There's another guy with a 4 on his jersey who might be making an appearance in this series at some point, too.
Which is?
Matthias
yeah,
Ekholm.
at some point.
He's got a 1 and a 4.
Yeah, he's got a 1 and a 4.
I got a little lost there.
Dallas has got their guy back, but Edmonton might get a
well,
guy
I think
back.
that's right.
And I think when you look at the defense, the body of work was like you can sit there and criticize the Oilers for their work on July 1st, but the additions of John Klingberg and Jake Wallman for me, Jack, has really kind of salvaged Edmonton's year in the back.
Klingberg's been a surprise, quite frankly.
Just Edmonton's.
He's been better in the postseason than he was in the regular season.
Yeah, he's proven he can perform.
We
in the
watched
postseason.
Toronto last night, and they could not handle a Florida forecheck
Yeah.
because their D couldn't outlet the puck, and the Oilers have D that can get the puck up the ice. Now Dallas has got I think Dallas is top heavy, and I don't mean to disrespect Cody Ceci or Ilya Lyubushkin or Bishel or any of those guys.
Alex Petrovic.
Who's created
He's
a.
the designated Stanley Cup playoff team,
Right.
man. He plays in the American
League
League
all
all
year.
year, and then he leapfrogs 3 guys.
Yeah, so but I think Edmonton has greater depth on defense. I'm certainly cognizant of how good Dallas's top 3D is, but another thing just to factor in here, Dallas was not overly physical against Winnipeg. They got out hit 2-1 in Game 6 in that series. I think it's the Oilers are hitting. Zach Hyman, I think, is leading the league in playoff hits.
Unbelievable.
Edmonton's got to get in and physically forecheck Dallas's defense.
All
This
right,
has got to be a bit like what we saw back in the old days when the Oilers were playing Dallas in the playoffs and trying to get 100 hits a game.
And Jack, it's going to be Dallas's defense that's got to go up against the Edmonton depth because they have certainly come to play. 9 players with at least 3 or more goals already in the opening 2 rounds. How much of a challenge is that going to be for the Lone Star State?
Well, the biggest thing is Edmonton's got 14 guys who can play, maybe 15. That can parachute in, and 13 of them have already scored.
Yeah.
And even Jeff Skinner in the one game he played, he had an assist. I mean, they've got production up and down the lineup. Now, on the other hand, you look at Dallas's 10th and 11th forwards, and it's Mason Marchment and Sam Steele. I mean, those guys aren't dog meat. Sam Steele scored a huge goal.
Massive goal.
I mean, is Edmonton deeper than Dallas? I'll say this. Jason Robertson isn't playing that well right now. Matt Duchene doesn't have a goal. Dallas has got to get their guys going. And you could say that, Edmonton's top guys haven't exploded yet either, but they're still in the top 3 in playoff points.
33 combined points.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like I keep hearing how David and Draisaitl haven't really gotten going. Well, if they do, maybe this series is going to be shorter. But I'm gonna say this. I don't sleep on Dallas. Dallas is a deep team.
I'm
Really
with
good
you.
This is to me a 6 or 7 game series.
All day.
And I know we said that about Vegas, and I would still claim, of course, you know me, I hate losing an argument. I would still claim that wasn't a 5-game series.
Only
not
child.
not in the traditional sense. That was a tough series.
Did you ever lose an argument to yourself?
No,
No.
that's the greatest thing about being an only child. And that's the thing is, this series might be shorter, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout either way. I mean, I think when these 2 teams shake hands at the end of the series, we're going to talk much the way we did about the Vegas series. Highly competitive throughout, regardless of what the actual final result is.
All right.
Everybody in the league respects Jim Nill and Peter DeBoer, and then the amount of good players that Dallas has. The 11-7 allows them to double ship rent, and at times that is going to be something that we're going to have to watch for. And does that change what Edmonton ultimately does with McDavid and Draisaitl? I think time will tell, but I fully expect it to be a super close series.
Very quickly on that, Jack, how does Rantanen change the complexion of this team?
Well, I mean, he gives them another explosive weapon, quite frankly. I think Joe Pavelski was kind of at the end of the line, did not have a great playoffs last year, was probably beat up himself. I mean, that's not a knock on Joe Pavelski. What an amazing career, but there's a significant upgrade there. And the additional experience that a guy like Wyatt Johnston, for that matter, Marchment, for that matter, Thomas Harley, they're all not a year older. They're a year better. The rest of the guys on both clubs might be a year older. I mean, but that's what's so intriguing about this matchup. For old school football fans, there was a Super Bowl once between Oakland and Minnesota. 2 teams that had been around it and around it and around it and hadn't won it. And Oakland won it. And I think Dallas and Edmonton are in the same. This generation of Stars and Oilers fans have seen their teams knocking at the door for 5 or 6 years. One is going to bust through.
Yeah.
It's just we're going to have to wait about 2 weeks to find out.
Well, you talk about all that experience. No player has more experience between these 2 clubs than Corey Perry. And leading up to Wednesday, I say swap the Perrys. It's supposed to be Katy Perry playing at the American Airlines Center on Wednesday night, but it's Corey Perry and the Edmonton Oilers. Oil Country, we hope you're ready for Game 1. Here we go.